Money Stop Mafia, let's move into the round of 8 after a Denny Hamlin victory punches his ticket into the championship 4. This is your most important NASCAR betting stop of the day. He's Cole Cusumano. I'm the little bro, Steven Cusumano. And as we like to do here, Cole, splash and go. Let's get right into this thing. The round of 8 is underway. What did we say? We said that Denny Hamlin needed his playoff moment. He needed his Michael Jordan moment. He needed it. And we had seen athletes come of age in the past. For some, it happens later than others. And for Denny Hamlin, we said it last week, and he got it. He has that signature win. When you look back on Denny Hamlin's career, this is one of the wins you're going to think of. Win number 60 in race number 1 of the round of 8. He had his clutch moment finally, where it seems like this is the round where he always chokes. The money stop never chokes, all right? We had an incredible weekend again. So roll through all that, Cole. I mean, we had just another masterclass this past week with Denny Hamlin taking the checkered flag.
Yeah, and first off, I'm happy you said that he clutched up like MJ, not Aaron Judge, like you were snorkeling last week.
Look, that was the recent memory that came to mind.
Yeah, now look where he is. He's in Cancun with our buddy Juan Soto and Pete Alonso. Anyway, back to NASCAR. You thought last week was a masterclass. We made you guys an absolute killing in Las Vegas. We said we were going to take the gambling out of Sin City, minimize the risk. We definitely did that tenfold because of our 12 drivers highlighted. You mentioned it there. Denny Hamlin got the win. Once again, we nailed the top 4 finishers. I got to go do some research here and get the actual numbers, but I feel like that's been a common trend as of late this last half of the season. We've been getting like the top 4 finishers with ease every single week. 7 of the top 10 finishers. Big money bets popped off as well. Kyle Larson did not get the win. He did lead the most laps, dominate this race for all intents and purposes. But one of our big money bets was an insurance bet on him to get a top 3. Finished runner-up once again, so that cashed. Chase Briscoe, top 5, money in the bank. And one of our value picks, Ryan Preece, sold Josh Weinstein. He got a top 10 out of that one as well. So those were 3 awesome props that we pointed you guys towards. And also, even with the better, worse prop finishes, Kyle Larson better than 4.5, Chase Briscoe, Joey Logano, Ryan Preece had our lone head-to-head matchup between Kyle Larson and William Byron pan out as well. So this was an absolute killing from us here in Las Vegas. And just real quick, you touched on Denny Hamlin getting that signature moment here at Las Vegas. Just being there in person and seeing his last 3 wins firsthand, I had chills. Win number 60, he's now number 10 on the all-time wins list. And it's just really cool to see like what he's been able to do at the stage in his career and at stage in his life, with so much going on between the lawsuit, his father's illness, and just, hopefully being able to finally get that first championship. It was really cool to see. But obviously, we're here to talk betting. We helped you guys tremendously out in Sin City. And now looking ahead to Talladega, this is the last big moneymaker of the season. This is where you can make the most bang for your buck because the odds payouts for this wild card event are like no other. And we always like to preface these shows by saying that it's going to be very informal. It's going to be more gut intuition based, our personal favorite picks, because quite literally anybody can win at Talladega or Daytona or even Atlanta. So if you feel good about BJ McLeod going out there and getting the job done, you're going to bet BJ McLeod. But these will be our personal favorite picks, our 12 drivers that we think are going to be the best bets for the win per our intuition. And I think one thing that we always say on the Money Stop, we're big Dexter fans here on the show. Me and you, Steven, obviously Cody working the board back there. Dexter has a code. He has a code for when he does his deed to satisfy his dark passenger. And our code that we live by on the Money Stop is to always go with your gut. And that applies tenfold when talking about betting at Talladega and Daytona. So the theme of this show is going to be to go with your gut, who you think is going to come out on top, have a quality day in this wild card event. And we're going to give you our favorite picks, like I said, and kind of give you tips to combat the chaos that is Talladega.
Yeah, and as you said, you kind of hit everything on the head. So I'm going to jump right into the favorites category. But just to piggyback on what you said, this is no, SVG minus 100 or plus 200 for the race win. I mean, your favorite to win this race is plus 1,000 by Ryan Blaney on pretty much every sports book. And, it's a very, very tight field. So like you said, this is a place where you could make money. And we said we were going to take the gambling out of Sin City, and that is something that full transparency and accountability is not easy to do at Talladega, but we've done it before. So this is a big opportunity to make money, and the opportunities are running away. We've got only 3 races left, man. This is insane. Talladega, Martinsville, Phoenix. So let's get into this favorites category, Cole. Pre-qualifying odds per BetMGM begin with, as I mentioned, Ryan Blaney plus 1,000. You've got Joey Logano at plus 1,100, tied with Austin Cindric. And then you've got Chase Elliott and William Byron tied at plus 1,400. So as we like to do and go with our intuition on these episodes here, Cole, I usually like to go with the drivers that I have become accustomed to see running up front, leading laps, running a clean, safe race with an opportunity to win at the final green flag of the final stage. So for me, when we talk about this at every super speedway we go to, that's always the Team Penske Fords. So for me, I'm choosing 2 drivers in that top 5 in odds who are both former winners at this track, including one this year, and 2 who will likely be drafting partners on Sunday. And so my 2 favorites are Joey Logano and Austin Cindric, who are tied at the second highest odds, depending on the sports book that you look at, with Ryan Blaney, their other teammate, of course, being just ahead of them. So first off, in the case of Joey Logano, we've talked at end about the fact that playoff Joey Logano is not the same driver as, regular season Joey Logano. And we've seen that on display during these playoffs. You expect it. It doesn't matter what the first 26 races look like. We know the last 10 are going to be really good. It's kind of the same way I compared Denny Hamlin last week to a typical athlete that doesn't perform in the playoffs that needs to get over the hump. With Joey Logano, it's the exact opposite. You could compare him to Eli Manning, right? He's had these lackluster regular seasons, whether he made the playoffs, didn't make the playoffs, but when he's in, he is going to be a force. And we've seen throughout Eli Manning's career, he took down the Goliath that was Tom Brady twice. Joey Logano, in my opinion, is one of the greatest drivers of all time because he has stood the test of time. From the point he was a rookie in 2009 to right now, I mean, he is driven against the likes of the Jimmy Johnsons, the Jeff Gordons, the Tony Stewarts, to now the current day stars like his teammates and Ryan Blaney, and on the other side of Chase Elliott, guys like that who are champions of the sport. He has stood the test of time and been somebody that, the reason I say that Jimmy Johnson is the greatest driver of all time is because he has been able to win in so many different scenarios, points packages, playoff scenarios, teammates, crew chiefs, every scenario you could think of. And that's something that not every driver has had to go through 3 generations of drivers that they're competing against. Joey Logano has done that. And the constant his entire career, whether it's been with Team Penske or not, has been success at super speedways, and specifically at Talladega. He has not run his best recently. He's coming off, in fact, back-to-back finishes here outside the top 30. But right before that, he did have a stretch of 3 wins in 3 years from 2015 to 2018. And listen, with Joey Logano, one stat we always like to talk about with the super speedways is how many laps are you completing, how many laps are you leading, and what is your average running position. So for Joey Logano, yes, he finished 39th, last place in the spring race Talladega this year. But guess what? He ran every single lap. And for Joey Logano, he's led 533 laps at this track in his career of 33 starts, and he has completed 94% of the laps here out of the 6,218 possible laps that he has had the ability to log at Talladega. So we know he's got the strength in numbers. We know he's got the speed. We know he's done it no matter where he's been in his career. And we know that it's the playoffs, right? And you look at the standings right now where everything was extremely tight entering last week at Vegas. Well, now Joey Logano is 24 points behind the cutoff. And, it's those 4 drivers, I guess you could say 3 drivers, Larson, Bell, Briscoe, that are above the cutoff. Behind them, you've got 4 drivers, Byron, Elliott, Logano, Blaney, that have some work to do. And lucky for those 4 drivers, this track proposes a really good opportunity for them to do that. So for Joey Logano, again, sticking with what we know, Penske Ford keeps it up front, finishes up front, not much left to say. Same case with Austin Cindric. I mean, he is our most recent winner here, right? He won at Talladega most recently the spring of this year, where prior to that, he had finished 25th, he had finished 32nd, and Nonetheless, he was on our outline because he's Austin Cindric at a super speedway. He is, even still, in my opinion, with the success he's had at the super speedways, the most underrated super speedway racer in the sport just because of who he is, right? He's still a young guy in the sport. He's still racking up that notoriety and that reputation. But for Austin Cindric, coming off the win here, listen to this. He has finished 99.1% of the laps possible at this track in his Cup Series career, the only exception being a crash in stage 3, the August race, or whatever it was, the October race of last year. So he has completed all but 12 laps in his career at Talladega. He's, I would say, the best pusher in the field. You know, a lot of times I mention those laps led for Joey Logano, and you're going to mention laps led for Ryan Blaney. Well, Austin Cindric doesn't get the flashy stats. He's only led 67 laps here, but that's because he is, in my opinion, the best pusher in the field. And that driver, who is the best pusher in the field, is always going to be there at the end. We said it back when he won here in the spring, and we're saying it again. Give me the 2 Penske Fords that are top 3 in odds as my 2 favorites for the race win this week, Cole.
Steven, that was great analysis on your part. I mean, the Penske Fords by far and away are the class of the field on these drafting style tracks, especially Daytona and Talladega. I mean, perfectly put with Austin Cindric, somehow one of the most underrated drivers on this discipline, but he has proven time and time again, whether it be with his Daytona 500 victory or this most recent victory at Talladega, that he is one of the best at his craft on this style track. Joey Logano, I actually spoke with him earlier this morning about why he's so good at this discipline. You know, a lot of people call it a wild card, very unpredictable, but I'm a firm believer that there is an art to this driving style of racing at Daytona and Talladega. As an art that he and Brad Keselowski and even I'd say Ryan Blaney have mastered to a T at this point in their respective careers. So real quick, here is a clip of what Joey Logano had to say about why he has the upper hand over a majority of the competitors at Talladega.
Coleman Presley, my spotter, does a fantastic job at being able to understand the draft and be able to see things coming and give me some good information. That's a big piece, right? So having a good spotter is key. We have fast cars. It's key to have fast cars as well, and work the race strategy. All those things are super important. This week, obviously, we got to lead the most important laps and the stages into the race. That's what matters the most.
Well, there you have it. Coleman Presley, one of the best spotters in the business, atop the spotter stand. I would say he and TJ Majors are the best in their field when it comes to these drafting tracks. So that gives Logano and Keselowski and guys of that nature a very, very high premium when you go to these relatively unpredictable tracks like Talladega. So obviously, Team Penske is by far and away the favorites, as made evidenced by the sports books, and going to be three of our favorites for this weekend. So I'll kick it off right there from my personal favorite. It's going to go with a redemption arc for this weekend, beginning with the guy who finished dead last at Las Vegas, my gut pick last week, in Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney, Mr. Millisecond, or you can call him Mr. 007 if you want to, because all 5 of his super speedway wins have come within 31 thousandths of a second or less. And that was actually his margin of victory in his last victory on these style tracks at Daytona in the regular season finale. So this is a guy that just knows how to get to the line first, regardless of where he's standing at the track coming to the Trioval. But I mentioned that last place finish at Vegas. He finds himself pretty much in a must-win scenario at this point. 31 points below the cutoff. Now, I think he finds himself, though, in a really good spot, because if there's any place that you want to go with your back against the wall in a must-win scenario, it's going to be Talladega, and it's going to be Martinsville next week. Because you look at his last 2 seasons where he made the championship 4, he was able to win at Martinsville in 2024 and right here at Talladega in 2023. And now, looking at his Talladega resume, obviously 3-time winner at this track. All those victories, once again, by less than 12 thousandths of a second. His last 2 being within 7 thousandths of a second. So he has just been on another level in terms of being able to get the line first at Talladega and these drafting tracks. But anyway, taking the margin of victories out of the equation, that's a long-winded and data-driven way of me saying that he's a 5-time super speedway winner. His last win at Talladega was fall 2023, but since then, he has not finished it better than 20th. But you mentioned the ability to complete laps and whatnot when talking about Joey Logano and Austin Cindric, which is an incredible number and stat to bring into this conversation, because you want to minimize risk with the unpredictability and chaos that is Talladega. And they have proven to be the fastest and the best in that area. Team Penske in 2025, between 4 or 3 super speedway tracks, so only accounting Daytona and Talladega, 38% of all laps led. And a Team Penske driver has had the most laps led in 2 of those 3 starts. And Logano, who you mentioned, most laps led in 1 of those and second most laps led in the other race where they had those most laps led. Now, 4 drivers in general have accounted for 52% of all laps led on super speedways in 2025. So the Blue Ovals have a significant advantage compared to the rest of the field and manufacturers when you go to these tracks like Talladega. So Ryan Blaney plus 1,100 per FanDuel for his outright race winner bet is the best prop you can get to open the weekend, and he's 10,500 in daily fantasy. Now, keeping with the redemption theme, I'm going to go with the guy that opened the season winning on a super speedway in the Daytona 500 in William Byron, who had an incredible showing out at Las Vegas, second most laps led, in line for a minimum podium finish of a day, before he got taken out in a bonehead move by Ty Dillon, which led to a DNF for that 24 team late in this race. And we said it going into Las Vegas. He was the one driver in the round of 8 that we did not highlight for Las Vegas, because we wanted to see more to instill trust before betting on number 24 going forward in the playoffs. And I think, honestly, I've seen enough with that race last week. He had a great car, qualified top 5, 55 laps led, and in line for a potential win. There was one point in this race with like 50 to go where I was like, you know what? We didn't mention him at all last episode, and he's going to win this damn race. But again, got taken out in a late race instant that really could have been avoided. And for that, he is now 15 points below the cutoff as the 5th seeded driver going into Talladega. But he's shown signs of life in the playoffs. We made it like he really hasn't been the best, but he's had 5 straight finishes of 12th or better going into Las Vegas. And now having that speed to contend for the win was all I needed to see to put him back on the outline for this race. As mentioned, he won the season opener at Daytona this year, and also this year finished 3rd at Talladega and 19th in the regular season finale at Daytona. As far as his drafting track resume is concerned, 2-time Daytona winner, 2-time Atlanta winner, but his numbers for Talladega, despite being winless, are insane. He's finished top 15 in all 7 next-gen starts at Talladega. Currently, 5 straight races of finishing 7th or better, with back-to-back 3rd-place finishes going into this one, and finished a career-best 2nd in that span in the fall of 2023. So 2 guys in William Byron and Ryan Blaney who have won on drafting tracks this year and who are in need of a really strong run to get back above the cutoff or potentially win their way into the championship 4 at Talladega this weekend.
Yeah, that's what makes this week so interesting, right? Is the fact that you have those 4 drivers that, as we mentioned, all had bad finishes last week, all behind the cutoff, and they kind of all need a win. And you never know. Any one of those 3 drivers ahead of them, Larson, Bell, or Briscoe, they could have a bad race. And then all of a sudden, William Byron is back in fortune. And I'm glad you brought him up in the favorites, because that was a race I really needed to see. We were very vocal about that, talking about the loose change last week, that, if it's not going to happen at Vegas, it's not going to happen. And I think now that we've seen it, and to that caliber, it's not like he was running top 5. He had a borderline race-winning car. That makes me feel very confidently about William Byron this week and going forward. But I want to,
real quick, I just want to say, when talking about betting on the drafting tracks like Talladega, I think it's important to do like tiers as far as drivers are concerned and their ability to navigate these tracks. I would say that there's 2 drivers right now in a league of their own. It's Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano for sure. Holistically, you put Brad Keselowski in that same air, but he hasn't been as good as of late in finishing these things off. But that next tier down, it's definitely Austin Cindric and William Byron. And I would say they're both like very, very close with breaking into that elite tier with Logano and Blaney. So you talk about minimizing risk at these style tracks. It's those 4 drivers as legitimate favorites to where you could see them going out there and winning the race and getting you some profit if you want to put some money on like prop finishes for like a top 5 or a top 3.
And you could make the argument that the only reason they're not in that next tier is because they haven't raced long enough to be in that next tier. You know, you're talking about a guy, at least in the case of Joey Logano, that has been racing quite a while now. And in the case of Ryan Blaney, has been racing a little bit longer than William Byron. So he has at least a little bit more of a track record and being able to do this consistently for his career. So you mentioned a driver that I was going to bring up as we transition to our sleepers category, Cole. And I wanted to point back to something you said when you were mentioning Ryan Blaney, and that's that super speedway racing is an art. And I feel like the modern day Picasso of this kind of art has been Brad Keselowski, right? I mean, you mentioned that the recent results have not been as good. And BK this week is plus 1,800 on FanDuel, which is his best value on any of the three major sports books this week. Brad Keselowski has 6 wins at Talladega, which is among the most of all time. He has completed 94.8% of the laps here, and that is in 324 laps led. So for Brad Keselowski, you're talking about his first ever win coming at this track way back in 2009, an iconic race that took place with him benefiting from a last turn crash. That's kind of like a microcosm of his career, right? He's just had a knack for Talladega and these kind of tracks. And interestingly enough, for Brad, his 6 wins at this track have kind of come at different times in his career, right? He had the one in 2009. He had the next one in 2012, 3 years later, when he's with Team Penske, oh, by the way. He had the next one after that, 2014, 2 years later, still with Team Penske, and then 2016. So you're talking about steadily just punching in a win every now and then. He gets another one, 2021, and that was his most recent win. And there was another in 2017. So what I'm getting at here, Cole, is that he has 6 wins at this track. 5 of them have come with Team Penske. That's further reason to dump what you have on the Team Penske. However, with Brad Keselowski, you're looking at a guy that prior to finishing 36th in this race during the spring, he had back-to-back second-place finishes. So he finished runner-up both races at Talladega last year, and he finished 5th in the spring race 2023. He had back-to-back top 2 finishes in the 2021 stretch of Talladega races. He's just a guy that, you know, regardless if it's with Team Penske or not, right now it's with his own team, he knows what that art of racing on super speedways is. And we've talked before. I mean, you just mentioned how beneficial it is for a guy like Joey Logano to have Coleman Presley on the spotter stand. Joey Logano has been able to benefit from somebody like TJ Majors for a lot of his career. But irregardless of even that pivotal factor at super speedways, Brad Keselowski has stood the test of time. And I don't care that there's been some DNFs that he has had recently. He's a guy that you are always going to pick when you go to the super speedways. And listen, Father Time is ticking down on Brad. He has had several opportunities, even during these playoffs, to click off what could be maybe his final career win in the twilight stage of his career. But to me, Cole, it would only feel fitting if that final win or one of those final wins came at Talladega, the place where it all started, right? So not only is this a gut call, it's also just common sense, right? It doesn't take a lot of reasoning to tell you why Brad Keselowski is a good sleeper for the win and probably my favorite non-playoff spoiler for the win this week. So there's 8 drivers remaining in championship contention, and there are 7 that have not had their ticket punched to the championship 4. The one who has, as we mentioned, Cole, Denny Hamlin. I mean, we have seen a newfound composure and maturity. I mean, seeing the emotions out of Denny Hamlin after that 60th career win at Vegas was unlike anything I've ever seen. Like, I thought it was a bit at first. I thought he was going to break out of it and go back to his normal tormenting of the fans, but it was not a bit. We're seeing a newfound composure from Denny Hamlin in, you know, this stage of his career where he has been one of those guys, like you said, in that top tier of super speedway racers. And he also, like Brad Keselowski and like Joey Logano, has completed 94.5% of the laps he has logged here. And that is over 39 starts. So he has among the most starts in the field at Talladega, over 7,000 laps logged here by the time Sunday is said and done. And he has led 445 laps. He has 2 wins here, none since 2020, the first of which was back in 2014. I think when you think of Joey Logano, first of all, at super speedways, you think of Daytona and his stretch of several Daytona 500 wins in a row. But you also think about the fact that the last few years, the results have not been as consistent, right? He finished 21st here in the spring. He finished 10th at this race in the playoffs last year, and he finished 37th in the spring of last year. So the results have not been quite as consistent, and I think part of that is because, listen, with the Toyotas, there's not as much strength in numbers, right? But I think it's still Joey Logano, or excuse me, Denny Hamlin at a super speedway. And listen, like there are 7 hungry and desperate drivers that are wanting to punch their ticket to the championship 4. And there are another 30-some drivers that have 3 more opportunities to win a race this year. But what Denny Hamlin has that nobody else does is nothing to lose, right? He's already in the championship 4. Like, he's got win number 60 out of the way. There's 10 names above him on that list that he wants to go and pass up on NASCAR's all-time wins list. So why not Denny Hamlin at Talladega? Why not Brad Keselowski at Talladega? I know those are 2 drivers that have not had the more consistent results recently here, but listen, they are 2 of the best super speedway racers of this modern generation in NASCAR, and for that reason, they have got to be at least sleepers for the win this week.
Undoubtedly. And I'm happy you mentioned Denny Hamlin too, because I feel like in a similar vein to Austin Cindric, but even on a magnified scale, like he is so underrated and underappreciated as a drafting track racer. I mean, 5 combined wins is up there for most among active drivers in the series between his 3 at Daytona and 2 at Talladega. He's another guy that just knows how to really slice his way through the field and make those smart and calculated moves to stay out of the mess and just be up there when it matters when it comes down to the end of these things. So I think, again, the only thing that scares me is obviously he has nothing to lose. So does he play it conservatively? Does he help his teammates? I don't know. That remains to be seen. And of course, the Toyotas have been notorious for not being the best pushers in the field with those rounded noses. So they've had trouble finishing these things off with this current car. Brad Keselowski, nothing else left to say on him. I mean, although he's winless on these style tracks with this current car, you mentioned it there. Last year, he finished runner-up in both Talladega races. He finished runner-up at Daytona in 2023. And hell, even this year, he finished runner-up at Atlanta in a heartbreaker where he led the most laps and dominated that entire race. So there was one point this season, it was pretty much until Atlanta this year, later in the second Atlanta race, where I was like, I just don't see it from Brad Keselowski. Like he just, it's very uninspiring that he's not up there running up front, making these aggressive moves to get up there when it matters the most. But then he puts in a performance like he did at Atlanta, and you're like, okay, he still has it. It's still Brad Keselowski on a drafting track. And I think the big thing as well is that with his 7 super speedway wins, 6 of them, as you mentioned, have come at Talladega. So although Daytona and Talladega get roped into like one specific discipline, there is a difference, and he definitely knows how to get around Talladega better than he does at Daytona. And we've seen that in recency last year when he finished runner-up in both those races. So I mean, you always got to take Brad Keselowski into consideration when going to Talladega. I like where your head's at and going for a sleeper, or I guess a spoiler and a sleeper in the playoffs. For me, I'm going to start with my spoiler, and that's got to be Bubba Wallace at plus 2,200 on FanDuel, $7,700 in daily fantasy. Talk about, again, the theme here, minimizing risk. One of the best on drafting tracks. I kind of put him maybe at the back end of that tier 2 for the drafting track drivers and those who can really perform at this track, because there is some volatility baked in there. In 2025, he's got 2 top 10s, along with 3 finishes outside the top 20 when taking into account Talladega, Daytona, and Atlanta. But one of those top 10s was at Talladega, where he finished 8th. That was his best drafting track finish this year. Many will remember back to 2021 in this race in the fall, where he won this race in rain-shortened fashion. Although that is his only drafting track win, he does have 3 runner-ups, albeit all at Daytona. He's also riding back-to-back top 10s at Talladega. So Bubba Wallace, like more of like an upside play with that volatility in mind, obviously. But coming off a strong run at Vegas, which was met with adversity for the late race cautions, didn't get the finish he really deserved, but still things are looking up for that team, having once again a career year in the case of Bubba Wallace. And then, of course, for my final sleeper, I made this bold call back in February over here in SpeedFreaks in the Lucas Oil Studios. Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson has a nasty reputation for his ability to race on the drafting tracks. It is the only discipline in the Cup Series where he has not won yet. But I have been adamant and emphatic in the sense that I think he's going to get it done in 2025, and this is his last chance. That could not have come at a better time. Finished third, if you'll reflect back to at Atlanta in that first race, and you look at where he is right now, riding back-to-back runner-up finishes in a race where he just dominated in Las Vegas. He's finished 7th or better over his last 4 starts. But the only con, I guess, working against him is that he is 35 points to the good as the highest seeded driver going into this race at Talladega. So there is obviously the concern that he'll play it more conservative and look to preserve those points. But for a competitor and a racer, true racer like Kyle Larson, the objective is to always go out there and win the race, get the trophy, and make a statement in making your way into the championship 4. And I think he has a great chance at doing that. He has improved his drafting track program dramatically since making the jump to the Cup Series. Finished 20th to open the season in Daytona. That is his worst finish in 2025 on the drafting track. So he's finished top 20 in all 5 drafting track starts this year. Again, mentioned that 3rd place finish at Atlanta. That wasn't even his best finish. His best finish came here at Talladega in the spring, where he finished 2nd. So he's been knocking on the door. He's been getting the results. He's been running up front, getting stage points. I think he has a great shot to surprise a lot of people. And despite having a good points standing right now, going into this race at Talladega, to make a statement and get that first career drafting track victory at Talladega. Also finished 6th in the regular season finale at Daytona. So you add that all up, 3 top 10s in 5 drafting track starts. Again, top 20 in all 5 of those with a 9.6 average finish. So that's one of the best in the series in 2025 on these style tracks. Also riding back-to-back top 5s at Talladega. So many like to write him off when we go to Daytona and Talladega and Atlanta, but not me. I'm sticking to my guns. Do not be surprised when that number 5 car ends up in victory lane on Sunday.
Yeah, you gotta, like we always say, you gotta go with your gut. You gotta stick to your guns. And listen, there is definitely reasonable cause for concern with that 35-point cushion. But, think of it this way. Think of it 2 ways, really. Those 7 drivers or 6 drivers behind him, they're going to be stage racing. So obviously, if Kyle Larson is playing it safe, you can't ride out in the back when you're racing for stage points. And the second you race too conservatively under this rules setting, all those drivers are caught up to you by stage 3. If he doesn't get any stage points, and you're talking about like Chase Briscoe or Chase Elliott winning 2 stages, they just gained 20 points on you. So as conservative as you think he would be, he really can't be. And the other reason to think about Kyle Larson is I like to think, we talk NASCAR betting on this podcast, but we also try to sprinkle in some general betting advice. When you're cooking up a parlay in any sport, and I'm going to use football as an example, there needs to be some sort of a game script, right? If you're choosing to bet on the Chiefs and Lions game and you're betting 3 or 4 anytime touchdown scores, you can't pick the under, right? If you're betting on there to be 4 touchdown scores, the game is going to be an over. You're probably going to bet on said quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, to have over X amount of passing yards, right? There has to be a game script if you're cooking up a good parlay. And if we're talking about guys like Chase Elliott, William Byron, running up front, maybe winning the race, and we're talking about guys like Denny Hamlin running up front, winning the race, there has to be a tango partner, right? So if you feel confidently that William Byron is going to be up there and run up front, who's his drafting partner going to be? It's going to be either Chase Elliott, or it's going to be Alex Bowman, or it's going to be Kyle Larson. So for that reason, as we transition to value picks here, Cole, I'm going to go with a couple of gut checks, and one driver in specific I'm about to mention that kind of holds this logic true, because I mentioned Denny Hamlin and that there is not any strength in numbers. There's less strength in numbers for the Toyotas than the other 2 manufacturers in the sport. And for Denny Hamlin to run up front, he will need a drafting partner. Will it be Chase Briscoe? Will it be Ty Gibbs? Will it be another driver, Christopher Bell? That remains to be seen. But there's only 3 options to pick from. And I think that when you look at Chase Briscoe, who is a playoff driver that needs to win and is valued by the sportsbooks at plus 2,500 this week, to me, that's simply too good a value to pass up on for a guy that we have called a championship favorite during these playoffs. And again, if you think that Denny Hamlin or Christopher Bell are going to run up front, then by association, you basically think Chase Briscoe is going to run up front. And I feel like that's another big reason as to how Austin Cindric has risen to super speedway supremacy, right? Because you're talking about Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney as two of the greatest super speedway racers of this generation. Well, who benefits? Austin Cindric. So you talk about Joe Gibbs Racing needing strength in numbers, in the numbers that it has. Chase Briscoe needs a good run. He's got to stick with his teammates. I don't have a ton of logic outside of that, but I think it's just as valid of logic as you would need. And if you needed any other, Chase Briscoe, since he's come in the Cup Series, has one top 5 here. It came in 2023. He has one additional top 10 on top of that. It was in the fall race of 2022. So clearly he has been able to finish up front here when he's needed to. And also, this is a different version of Chase Briscoe, right? We sound like a broken record. We've said it the entire second half. Joe Gibbs Racing Chase Briscoe is not Stewart-Haas Racing Chase Briscoe. And I think that the Joe Gibbs Racing Toyotas are going to be running up front this week, next week, and at Phoenix. I think Chase Briscoe is going to be a part of that. The numbers don't reflect that Chase Briscoe will go out there and win. However, the logic does. And sometimes you got to use logic when it comes to betting, right? So his best value on any of the sports books on BetMGM at plus 2,500. So that is my case to be made for Chase Briscoe, and it also reaffirms the case you made for Kyle Larson. I want to move on to a legitimate gut call now, because this is another spoiler. This is a guy that has not been anywhere near the playoff picture all year. This is also a guy, though, that has a prior super speedway win in his career, and that is Phoenix's own Michael McDowell, who won the Daytona 500 a couple of years ago. Moneybags McDowell, we like to call him. He's been a guy that, for whatever reason recently, has started up front, but not finished up front, right? So he finished 11th at Talladega earlier this year. That speaks to me, because this has not been a good year for Michael McDowell, right? He's been a guy that has been able to keep the nose clean at a lot of super speedways. He is a little bit volatile. I feel like he's a driver that's either going to finish outside the top 30 or inside the top 10. At Talladega, finished third here as recently as the fall of 2022, finished third here as well in the spring of 2021. Does not have a win at this track in 29 starts. But again, he's got the win at Daytona in the crown jewel of racing, Daytona 500. And listen, strength in numbers, right? I've said that several times. He's a Chevy. And if you think that there's going to be other Chevys outside of the Hendrick Chevys, they need dancing partners. And Michael McDowell can certainly be one of those guys that is a veteran who has been there and done that in the sport. And I think he would love to win at Talladega, right? So you're talking about drivers with an extreme outside chance at the win. Michael McDowell is plus 3,500 on both BetMGM and DraftKings. So pick your poison between those two sports books. I think for a driver as accomplished as he is and as respected as he is on the super speedways, that is value too good to pass up on. So I like Chase Briscoe and I like Michael McDowell as my two favorite value picks in the field this week.
Those are two excellent long shot bets, if you want to call them that, in the case of Briscoe and McDowell. For Briscoe, like, he's not a guy that you typically think of when you go to the drafting tracks, but this year, he won the pole at Daytona, finished top 10. He also tied for third most laps led at Talladega in this spring as well. So he's a guy that's had speed here. And although you might not think of him, there's guys like his teammate, Christopher Bell. I mentioned Kyle Larson, that they just know how to get it done when it matters. And I feel like this is a driver in Chase Briscoe and a team in the 19 team that has proven time and time again in the playoffs thus far and this last half of the season that they can get it done when it matters most. They're just clicking on all cylinders. Again, a top 5 finish at Las Vegas, despite having not really a top 5 day overall. A team that knows how to battle through adversity. And I think there is something to be said for the teammate aspect as well, as you mentioned, with guys like Christopher Bell, who's blossomed into his own right as a really good drafting track racer, and obviously his teammate Denny Hamlin, who has 5 wins on this discipline. But Michael McDowell, awesome pick. I love that one a lot. Has a great drafting track pedigree. I kind of put him in that like C tier, just given, as you mentioned, the volatility. But this is a guy last year that had most poles in the series and most front row starts in the series, courtesy of his speed on the drafting tracks. So he's been really good in that area. Obviously went from a Ford last year to a Chevy this year, so there's been a bit of a learning curve. but this is still a guy that knows how to get the art of drafting down and making those moves to get to the front. And I think another big thing here is, you mentioned again, the teammate aspect. He has a guy in Justin Haley, who was just announced earlier this week, will be without a ride next year at Spire Motorsports. He's a great drafting track racer. He'll have him on his side, as well as the young hotshot, the guy I'm going to mention up here next, Carson Hocevar. When betting, fortune favors the bold, and the same applies to going to tracks like Talladega. Fortune favors the bold and aggressive, both of which Carson Hocevar embodies to a T. He has had excellent speed on the drafting tracks this year. So he has 2 DNFs this year in 5 starts. The 3 races he did finished top 10 in all 3 of those. That includes a runner-up at Atlanta and 6th place at Talladega. And I also want to mention those 2 DNFs that he had at the drafting tracks this year. They were for mechanical issues, not even for getting involved in wrecks. So I think with this current car, we have seen that you really got to be aggressive to make your moves. And you can make the case there's nobody more aggressive in the field right now than Carson Hocevar. So I think for a long shot bet with some volatility baked in, obviously, 35 plus 3,500 on DraftKings is a great value to consider to sprinkle on. Also a really decent value in daily fantasy at $6,900. But again, piggybacking off your McDowell pick, great drafting teammates in Justin Haley and Michael McDowell as well. Also, forgot to mention, I spoke with Michael McDowell at the track on Saturday of last week. That interview aired this past Sunday, so SpeedFreaks Mojo could be on Michael McDowell's side.
Dang.
There we go. And then for my final value pick here, it's a true long shot. Although fortune does usually favor the bold at these tracks, I think there is also an art to being calm and collected on these drafting tracks. And there's nobody that is better at that than someone like Zane Smith. Zane Smith plus 5,500 in daily or in DraftKings for outright race winner. He's had speed on these tracks. I'm not going to say he's been like lights out, leading a bunch of laps, finishing top 10 every single time, but he's run up front enough to where I have confidence going to these tracks in Daytona, Talladega, and Atlanta, to where I have an eye on him as a good value pick, mainly for daily fantasy, but also as a guy with top 10 upside. In 5 starts, there were 3 races where he did not crash. He placed inside the top 20. That includes 7th and 11th place. And now one of those where he finished top 20 was at Talladega this spring, where he won the pole, actually, and finished 19th. That was his best finish in the Cup Series at Talladega. So again, 5 top 15s with 1 top 10 and 13 drafting track starts. So that points to a top 15-ish floor with top 10 upside on an optimistic day. And he's also proven that he's able to get it done on this discipline, winning 2 super speedway races in the Truck Series. So definitely the longest shot of our value picks here, but I like the upside for Zane Smith as a more, I guess, calmer and calculated play when taking into account like a top 10 bet as opposed to a race winner bet for this weekend.
Stage 2 of this podcast ran pretty long, Cole. We had a lot to say about our intuition. Our instincts are speaking through us right now. So we got to run through stage 3 here pretty quickly. Lucky for us, this is not your typical podcast. You know, we talk about intuition. We also talk about insurance. And that's like, you know, we talk about big money bets a lot of the time where, you know, those tend to be a little bit different from the winner bets we talk about throughout the episode. Insurance bets are what we talk about at the super speedways, right? Where, you know, if you're picking a driver for the win, you might want to also put an extra sum of money on them for a top 3 or top 5, because as we see all the time here, there's photo finishes, there's chaos on the last turn. And if you picked William Byron for the win and he loses the lead and finishes 4th coming out of turn 4, well, if you had an insurance bet on him, you're still going to come out on top, right? So long story short, big money bets this week. And you can add whatever you want to what I'm saying here. You know, if you're picking a driver, a couple of drivers, also leave some money, leave some units to place on a top 3, top 5, top 10 bet for those drivers. And as another general piece of advice, I would say, like, you know, what I said before rings very true with like the race script thing, right? Like if you feel really good about the Penske Fords, pick 2 of them and ride with them. If you feel really, really good about the Hendrick Chevys, pick 2 and ride with them, or whatever number you're comfortable betting on. But I think that is the most sound advice when it comes to betting on super speedway racing.
Without a doubt. And we saw this on full display last week at Las Vegas. We put an insurance bet out there for Kyle Larson to finish top 3 in the case he did not get the win, which indeed panned out. He finished runner-up after leading the most laps in this race and dominating it. So that was just kind of a precursor for what your tactic should be for betting Talladega. So if you're going to bet Kyle Larson for the race win, you're going to put $10, $15 on his top 5 prop, because all the top 5 props this weekend, given the uncertainty of Talladega, they're all above even payout. So Ryan Blaney, the race favorite, is plus 140 to finish inside the top 5. $10 nets you $24. So I do want to rope all the big money bets and head-to-heads and over-under bets and everything into this analysis as well, because there's not much else to say, really. It's that the most value this week's going to be in your race winner props and the finisher props. I'm not looking at the head-to-head matchups. I'm not looking at the over-under finishes and any of those other props, because when you can make $24 from putting 10 down on a top 5, that's all you really need to make some serious profit this weekend. And also rope in like a $50 budget. My tactic when betting on drafting tracks is I will pick 2 favorites. So in my case, I like Ryan Blaney and I like William Byron for the race win. I'll throw $10 on William Byron and Ryan Blaney to win the race. And then to complete the $50 budget, I'll put $15 on their top 5 props as insurance. So that's the best way I can articulate to bet for this weekend and have a good strategy without going down some. And also another thing I wanted to add here as well. Usually when you make bets across other different pro sports like NFL, NHL, MLB, they give you these no sweat free bets in return. I'm a big fan, a big advocate of putting like those free $10 bets, $5 bets, whatever the payout is, on race winner props. So like on a long shot. So like if you think, I don't know, Carson Hocevar is going to win this week, use your no sweat $10 bet on Carson Hocevar, but it could be on anybody. If you want to put it on like a favorite, you could do that as well. So that's kind of my tactics for betting Talladega and all these drafting tracks is you bet $10 on 2 race winner favorites for you, $15 on their top 5 props and insurance, and then use your no sweat bets on race winner props as well.
Yeah, I would echo that. As we put our money where our mouth is, Cole, and talk about that $50 budget you mentioned, I like to do this sort of in an escalator, right? Where I'm going to choose one driver. I'm going to choose Joey Logano, right? And as we usually split this budget down the middle, I want to use $25. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put $5 on Joey Logano to win. I'm going to put $8 on Joey Logano to finish in the top 3. And that leaves you with $12 to put on him to finish in the top 5. Or you could even do, winner, top 5, and top 10, however you want to spread that out. But I like the escalator approach where the fewest of your units is on the winner pick. Then you have a little bit more of that on a top 5. And then you have the largest sum of that as a top 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's another good tactic and approach for using like a $50 budget. Again, just to rehash what I said minutes ago, I think my play is always doing $10 on 2 race winners, $15 on their insurance prop for a top 5. But if you wanted to, you could also like take $5 and sprinkle it on a long shot like a Carson Hocevar or a Zane Smith or a Michael McDowell for their outright race winner prop, or even their top 5 prop or top 10 prop. Because again, all of these values for the top 5s and top 10s are going to be above even payout due to the unpredictable nature of Talladega. So that's kind of where my head's at for combating the chaos of Talladega.
All right, cool. Let's put our money where our mouth is for legit reasons. Let's pick our race winners and our favorite sleepers. Now, I want to pull back the curtains for a second here, because if you're a loyal listener to the Money Stop, you usually know that a lot of times I forget who went first the last week, right? I forget who chooses first. We go back and forth every week. Well, Cole does the hard work of making the outline, right? But every week he makes this outline, he erases what our picks were the prior week. So I have no recollection of who went first. So
you picked Kyle Larson. You went first last week.
and that was a hell of a pick, huh? But I'm just being transparent with the audience. That's why I forget every week. All right. So with that being said, bro, why don't you go first this week?
Yeah, I'm going to go double down on your pick from last week. I'm sticking to my guns. Going to go with a sleeper long shot here and Kyle Larson. I really think this team has been trending and the driver has been trending in the right direction on these tracks. He has proven to be arguably the most consistent driver on the discipline somehow in 2025. So give me a Kyle Larson win at Talladega this weekend.
All right. I'm going to go, I've been very high on these Penske Fords. I've been very high on Joey Logano in the playoffs. I'm going with Joey Logano this week, all right? I'm leaving Ryan Blaney out there for all the takers that would like him. I'm picking Joey Logano because I believe that this is a time of year that favors experience and favors drivers that know how to get it done. And, this is a track that favors the Penske Fords. So give me Joey Logano. I'm feeling really good about the Penske Fords. As I look for a sleeper pick here, Cole, these are drivers outside the top 15 in odds. That is looking at BetMGM. That's any driver, Tyler Reddick and behind. You know what? It's got to be some kind of a spoiler here. There's no playoff drivers outside that top 15 remaining. But I got to go with our boy. And that is somebody we have not mentioned. And that is Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who is plus 2,500 for the race win. And he is in that probably the C tier of super speedway racers, right? Where I mentioned it with Michael McDowell, or you mentioned it with him. Volatility, right? He's either going to finish first or last. So Ricky Stenhouse Jr., that's my sleeper pick for the win that we have not mentioned yet. Gut call.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's worth mentioning too. We went a full show without talking about Stenhouse on a drafting track. So good on your part.
Almost the whole show.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to go with one of the Spire Chevys. It's kind of a toss-up between Hocevar and McDowell, but I'll go with McDowell. I like your reasoning a lot for him. Again, playing off the SpeedFreaks mojo last week. I just think this is a driver and a team that always has the speed, always has the ability to go out there and lead laps, run out front, and make the needed moves to be in contention for the race win when it comes down to it. So give me Kyle Larson for the race win, and also Michael McDowell is my sleeper.
All right. That settles it up for Talladega this week, Cole. We've got 3 races left. There's 3 more opportunities to make some money. And hopefully, you laid some penny stocks down early in the season. So you land some futures bets, perhaps at the start of the playoffs or at the start of the season, whatever it may be. But this will be the YellaWood 500, 2:00 Eastern time, Sunday. Get into this race. If you don't normally watch NASCAR and you're not really enjoying what the NFL games have to offer, even if you are enjoying, flip back and forth, right? Check out at least like the final stage of this Talladega race. It's just so fun to watch, especially when you have money on it. And we say this, I feel like a lot of the time we talk about super speedways and Talladega. There's no more fun race to bet on than Talladega. And adding to the layers that are betting on this race are the playoff storylines. So this is going to be fun. It's Talladega. It's everything you want out of NASCAR. Money Stop Mafia. We're going to drop the jack. That's how every good money stop ends, right? So for Cole, I'm Steven. For our dark passenger behind the glass, Cody Johnson, the proverbial glass back there. Great job all year, all season, all race. For the entire Speed Freaks Nation, I'm Steven and Cole. We'll see you guys next week on the Money Stop with only a couple more opportunities to make some money on your most important NASCAR betting stop of the day.